Hello, welcome to our webinar session, Smarter Job Architecture, Rewiring the Work Behind the Work. I'm Kenny Etienne, a marketing lead here at Salary.com, and I'll be moderating the chat and the Q&A throughout this webinar. Just a couple of admin items before we get started. We'll share a copy of the slides as well as the recording via email within a couple of days after this session. And if you'd like to have your question answered during Q&A at the end, please drop them in that Q&A box, which you'll see in the Zoom toolbar, I think at the bottom of your screen. We'll try to get to them all, but if we don't, we'll follow up with you over email. Our speaker today is Taylor Lest, a solutions consultant here at Salary.com. She's been with us over 5 years. She's certified across all product suites and helps our clients find the right compensation data and management solutions for their organizations. She holds a BS in Industrial and Labor Relations from Cornell and is working toward her CCP designation. Welcome, Taylor. That pesky mute button. Um, but it's great to have you today.
Yes, my apologies. Thank you, everyone. Great. Thanks for coming.
Awesome. Great to have you with us. So, just a quick look at what we'll be covering today. We'll start by grounding ourselves on what job architecture actually is and why it tends to fall behind over time. From there, we'll get into the real cost when it does, what AI can practically do to help, and how to build something that stays current without that constant manual effort, right? And we'll close with honest advice on common mistakes and what to look for when evaluating tools for your own team. So, with that, let's get started. We'll pass the mic to Taylor.
Awesome. Thank you, Kenny. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you all are located. Thank you for taking the time to hop on this webinar today. So we're really going to talk through job architecture, kind of what is job architecture. Really, this quick level set. So before we go any further, we want to make sure we're talking about the same thing because this concept goes by many names: job architecture, job framework, job structure, job catalog. You may have heard of all of these. You may have heard of none also. At the core, job architecture is the system that organizes how roles are defined, how levels work, and how jobs connect to pay. It's the backbone behind your titles, your grades, career paths, and even compensation decisions. Whether yours is formal, documented structure, something that lives in someone's head, or an old spreadsheet, every organization has one to some extent. And the data backs this up as well. According to Mercer's Global Job Architecture Pulse, 76% of companies already have a job architecture in place, and another 21% are planning to build one out in the next year. So this isn't a future state conversation necessarily. Most of us are already in it. So if every organization or almost every organization has a job architecture, then I guess a good question is why are so many of them then struggling with it? And something I like to think about, the framework isn't necessarily the problem. The problem is that the organizations change faster than the framework has the ability to. So think about like what actually happens. A role can absorb three new responsibilities over 18 months. Is the job description getting updated? Usually not right away. The job level doesn't necessarily change as well unless someone really pushes for it. The title stays the same, the pay band stays the same, but the work behind the position is completely different than it was the 18 months ago. Another reason the framework may break down, often when you think about job descriptions, someone creates a good one and it gets copied and tweaked a dozen times across different departments. Now you have, let's say, 15 variations of a job that was never really designed to scale that much. Nobody knows which one is the authoritative one to actually follow. And the final reason, over time, the framework that was supposed to connect people to pay to strategy just drifts. It starts to reflect the organization you used to be, not necessarily the one you are. It quietly starts to fall behind. So to emphasize, this is not necessarily a people problem, it is more a designed problem. The instinct behind this is sometimes to blame the manager who didn't update the job description or flag the misalignment. But those are just symptoms behind the real concern. The real issue is that the job architecture systems were not designed originally to keep up with the rapid change.
So before we go further, we want to hear from you all in the audience directly. So let's take a quick poll. Once you see the question appear on your screen, just take a few moments to select the best option that best reflects where your organization stands today. And the question is, how would you describe the current state of your job architecture? A, it's solid, it's up to date, we review it regularly, right? So that's like, A plus for you. Or B, it exists, but we haven't touched it in a while, we aren't maintaining it, perhaps. C, we're inconsistent or our job architecture is inconsistent. Some parts are current and others are not. Or D, honestly, we're not sure where we're at or what we have, which is totally okay. I'm going to give folks a few more seconds to respond and then we'll share back. Looks like most of us have participated. We're at like 75%, and there's a clear response that's ahead of the others. So let's share back now. Okay, so it looks like 14% said solid and up to date, and it's reviewed regularly, which is awesome. 24% say it exists but hasn't been touched in a while. 48%, the majority say it's inconsistent. So some parts are current, others are not. And then 14% say they're not sure where they're at. So Taylor, I'm wondering if, like, looking at these results, do they surprise you or do they reflect what you commonly see with organizations that you work with?
This is pretty common. This really doesn't surprise me as much in terms of the inconsistency. A lot of organizations will come want to see some of our products because they want to streamline, standardize a lot of their content. Some things may be updated, some things may be current, but other parts of their job description process haven't been touched in a while. So as long what I'm trying to say, I should say, is a lot of organizations hope to have a solid up to date, but that can take a lot of time. That can take a lot of work in terms of managing that. So being inconsistent is typically what we're seeing now day to day.
Right. I can imagine if they have a lot of ongoing things, it's hard to put a like carve out time for a big project like
Yeah, it's
overhauling.
typically tough to address everything at once. You usually have to pick and choose, okay, what is the most up to date? Let's address that. And then other things can fall behind in that process.
Thanks everyone for participating in that poll. Let's get back to the presentation.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Now I'm going to focus a little bit on the human cost of getting it wrong. So we've talked about how frameworks can drift. Now let's talk about what that actually costs us. And the line at the bottom I want to emphasize first. So HR finds out through systems, employees find out through their paycheck. So what does that mean in practice? It means that when two employees doing essentially the same work are paid differently with no clear rationale, HR often doesn't catch it until a compensation audit or worse, an actual complaint from the employee. Um, but when you think about the employee, they find out when they get their offer letter or when they heard what a colleague makes in terms of, okay, we're doing very similar position work, very similar roles, but my colleague is getting paid a lot more. And then getting more into the human cost of getting it all wrong, inconsistent pay for similar work with no clear explanation. Um, because managers who cannot defend the leveling decision, employees have no visible path forward. And then again, the compliance gaps, FLSA classifications, equal pay exposure. These don't start as crises. They start as small mismatches that compound quietly over the years. Then time starts to catch up to them during the workflow, not necessarily during an audit. And now focusing a little bit about what AI can do. So this is more of getting into the substance. As I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, aware of, there's a lot of noise right now about AI in HR. So I want to focus on three specific use cases where AI is actually moving the needle on job architecture right now, not someday, right now. And the first use case is the one that takes up the most time for most teams, which is drafting and maintaining job content. So you're probably familiar of this if you've ever stared at a blank document trying to write a job description from scratch, or spent an entire afternoon trying to figure out, okay, which version of a job description is actually current. What AI does here is generate the first drafts anchored to your specific structure and style, not just generic descriptions pulled from the internet. It reflects your job families, your leveling logic, your language. And then it also often is going to flag content that looks stale. So descriptions that haven't been touched in 3 years, roles where the responsibilities no longer match the benchmark, titles that don't align with your grade structure. And the key shift is this, that the work moves from creation then to review. Your team isn't writing from scratch, they're making now more sound judgment calls on the AI generated content. That's a much better use of their expertise. The second use case is flag classification risk early. And this is one that actually saves organizations from very expensive problems down the road. Here, what usually happens is a job gets created or updated, it goes through approvals, and nobody checks necessarily whether it's correctly mapped to a benchmark job until something like a review or an audit surfaces an issue. By then, you probably have dozens of employees that are effective. AI changes that by identifying where a role may be misclassified based on how it matches against the benchmark role. So making sure they comply with things like FLSA guidelines. You'll get flagged that says the job description may look like exempt versus non-exempt. It also can help with leveling. The job description looks more like a level 4 than a level 3 based on the benchmark match. This allows you to investigate it right here before it can become a pay equity issue. And the final use case is the surface market signals in real time. And this is how your teams can change how they think about market data. Typically, most organizations today do a compensation review once or twice a year. They pull survey data, compare it to their structures, make adjustments. This cycle worked fine previously when markets moved slowly. It doesn't work well in markets that shift quickly, like today's market. What AI enables is embedded market signals. So pay movement, demand trends, competitive hiring activity directly into your workflows. This isn't a separate task, a quarterly report. It's right here, right now, when looking at a job. You can see where the market has moved and whether your pay range is still competitive. That doesn't mean you have to make pay decisions in real time based on the data. There's still a process for that, but it means the information is visible when you need it, not necessarily 6 months down the road. So now how to stay ahead of framework drift. So first, The difference between a one-time cleanup and an ongoing system. Most organizations approach job architecture the same way. Let's say they approach something like spring cleaning. It accumulates until it's unmanageable. Then someone has a massive project to fix it. This can be exhausting and also very expensive for organizations. An AI assisted system gives you exception-based maintenance instead, where the system flags what needs attention, your team reviews and decides. You're not rewriting and starting from scratch every 3 years. Instead, you're just making small, continuous changes, continuous updates to your job descriptions. Next, why general AI falls short here? Because it does not know your job family, grade, structure, compensation, philosophy. If you've experienced at all with a general AI tool to write job descriptions, you've probably noticed that it does a decent job on the surface. The output looks professional, but it doesn't necessarily know your own internal information. Again, like your job family, it doesn't know your job structure. It doesn't know your compensation philosophy. So you get something that might read well, but doesn't fit with your own design, your own structure. Purpose-built tools are trained on this specific issue with the ability to incorporate your organizational context. And this gap is going to be very important, especially down the road. Another way to stay ahead of the framework drift is with exception-based workflows. And these surface issues automatically instead of waiting for someone to notice. Instead of having a team manually auditing hundreds of job descriptions on a calendar, the system surfaces the ones that need attention. So it flags for staleness, flags for classification, risk, flags because maybe the market has just moved. Your team then focuses their energy on where it actually matters versus having to focus on everything at once. Everything else may just stay more in maintenance mode. And finally, what this frees up HR teams to do. So when you're not spending 60% of your time managing job content, you can spend it on strategic work. So workforce planning, skill gap analysis, career pathing, pay equity. The administrative burden lifts, and then the strategic capacity now opens up to do other tasks. So then again, focusing on that quote at the bottom, AI delivers the highest ROI, not when it replaces human decisions, but when it removes the low judgment work that prevents humans from making good ones. Next, just some common mistakes and what to watch out for. First, so mistake one, using a general tool and expecting specific results. This is probably the most common one, using a general AI tool and expecting it to behave like a purpose-built solution. General tools can be very impressive. I've used a bunch, I'm sure you've used a bunch. They can write a job description, but again, they can't apply your leveling logic, anchor to your benchmark library, or flag for inconsistencies. If you try to force a general tool onto a complex compensation process, you'll spend more time correcting its output than actually doing it manually. Mistake two, updating the technology without changing the process around it. So again, maybe making the technology more modern, but not necessarily the process. So if you buy a better tool and keep the same broken process around it, can be pretty large mistake. If your job architecture process is ad hoc and inconsistent, AI will help you produce ad hoc and inconsistent output. The technology adaptation has to come with the process redesign. So who owns job content when it gets reviewed? Who has authority to approve changes? The tool doesn't fix the governance. And then mistake three, building job architecture in isolation from market data in skills framework. Your job structure should be a living connection between your internal organization and the external market. So if you're maintaining job content without any line of sight to what the market looks like, you're flying blind on compensation competitiveness. You really need to connect jobs to skills. And if you're not doing this, you're missing that foundation for workforce planning. Now, so this slide now focuses on more evaluating AI for your team. So how do you actually evaluate AI tools for this problem? I'm going to give you three questions that cut through the feature comparisons and get to what actually matters. So the question is not whether AI belongs in HR, it is whether the tool was built for this problem specifically. Question one, where is the manual lift highest? That's your starting point. If your team spends the most time maintaining job descriptions, that's where AI should move the needle first. If classification risk is your biggest concern, that's your priority. Don't start with necessarily the most interesting use case. Start with your most painful one, where AI can benefit you, make a lot of your processes less manual, save you time in your day. Question two, where does drift cost you the most? So think about where misalignment between your job structure and reality actually hurts you. A pay equity finding, a manager who couldn't defend a leveling decision, a compliance gap that maybe got expensive. That's where accuracy and timeliness matter most. You'll want to prioritize those areas. And then question three, is the tool purpose-built or general? As I mentioned earlier, the gap matters than most people expect. Something important to ask vendors, can this tool incorporate our job families and grade structure? Can it flag classification risk based on our specific benchmark library? Can it surface market data in context, not just as a separate report? If the answers are vague, that can be a pretty big signal. So then some key takeaways. First, AI reduces the manual lift so HR can focus on judgment, not upkeep. The goal isn't automation for its own sake. It's freeing up your team's expertise for the work that actually requires it, not having them focus on manual tasks that are made perhaps not as important, not as relevant to where and what they could be spending their time and expertise on. The second, purpose-built intelligence keeps frameworks aligned as your organization grows and changes. General tools won't cut it for a specific problem this specific. The structure matters. And then finally, the right evolution lens is the difference between a tool that helps and one that adds work. So the right fit matters more than the best features. Use the three questions I gave you. Start with the pain. Now, again, not just necessarily the best features.
Thanks, Taylor. And before we transition into Q&A, because we do have a few questions, I did want to share a little about our software and our consulting services relevant to what Taylor's been talking about, right? We do have a solution to support this work at scale called Job Architect Max. What it does is bring job content, market data, skills, and competencies all into one place. So you're not manually piecing these things together across your different tools, right? So as you create or update your roles, you can see relevant pay ranges, hiring activity, market context alongside the job content itself. So it makes it easier to stay consistent and make those informed decisions without adding that extra complexity to the process. And then we also have a team of seasoned compensation consultants, right? Who partner with in-house comp teams to help you navigate those complex challenges and build effective compliance strategies. So whether it's building job architecture or refining your comp philosophy or rolling out pay ranges, our consultants can help you create that alignment across your org and maintain trust with your employees. And now, before we take your questions, I want to pass the mic back to Taylor just to show you a quick look at Job Architect Max in action.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Kenny. What I'm going to do really quick, everyone, is just stop sharing my screen so I can pull up my demo instance. And we'll spend about 5 minutes into the product today. Really want to focus the majority of the webinar on questions that you all may have within the product. But I want to spend 5 minutes on our Job Architect Max tool, which is essentially our complete job management solution. And what we'll really focus on today is how we've infused AI into the job management tool itself to really automate a lot of the workflows I spent time going through today, whether it's creating content, compliance, identifying duplicate roles within your organization. We offer AI tools to help with all of those tasks. There's also real-time market insights infused throughout the platform too. So as you write job descriptions, you can easily see what your peers are posting for, compare yourself not only in terms of the posting information, but also the ranges too. Our agents are pulling from our domain, pulling from our library of resources. So whenever you do use them, you can feel confident it is coming from a best-in-class, reliable data set, which is key, especially with an agent like our job description writer. It is leveraging your own internal field headers and generating content for you based off of the job title that you provide. And as I mentioned earlier, this is being trained off of our own internal job taxonomy. So this can be helpful with any unique positions you're struggling to find data for. So you can see here on the right-hand side of the screen, we're recommending some of that job content for you. But it's also helpful to streamline a lot of your processes because this is trained off of our taxonomy, our leveling guide, our job families function. So a lot of organizations who have an inconsistent taxonomy or architecture or want to build one up from scratch will leverage this agent, leverage our taxonomy. We also have great FLSA checker agent, and this is going to help make sure you're complying with FLSA guidelines to identify exemption status risks and gaps. We're going to tie your job summary back to one of our own benchmark roles, review the content, and summarize the FLSA status. Another helpful agent is going to be our description intelligence agent. And this is where we really infuse the real-time market insights into the product. So as you write job descriptions, you can view snippets of information around what are the pay ranges from job postings, who are the top companies, and it's pulling this information from your job title within your headquartered market. And how we're gathering this information, we're scraping company career sites, job posting boards. Really, any publicly available company posted data goes into this so you can keep track of what your peers are doing and stay competitive with these roles. One final tool I want to take a minute to highlight is going to be another agent available, which can be especially helpful as you look to clean up, consolidate positions. I've seen a lot of HR teams benefit from this because a lot of organizations have, let's say, 400 employees and they have 400 job descriptions, but they don't have 400 unique roles within their organization. So they'll be tasked with projects around cleaning up, consolidating. So our job duplication identifier identifies any roles above a 92% similarity score that we believe are similar. We'll give you a nice side-by-side comparison on those roles so you can go in, see yourself perhaps why they may be similar, choose to make one inactive or delete from your tool. But where we're really leveraging AI is we are going to explain to you why they are similar. So after reviewing both of these positions, we believe they are similar based off of similar job level, similar responsibilities, similar requirements. And then we'll come to a conclusion at the bottom of why they are considered duplicates and why you don't need both of these within your organization. So here are just some previews into the Job Architect Max solution, how we've really infused the platform with AI, with real-time market insights to help you make a lot of your tasks less manual, save you some time, automate your workflows.
Taylor, does the FLSA checker also check for state laws? That was the question we got.
Great question. So right now it just takes for FLSA, but we are actually growing upon these agents. So that is a great note and something we definitely can look to add to the agents.
And does Job Architect integrate with HRIS like ADP, Rippling?
Yes, we can integrate with all those providers in order to pull information from, let's say, Rippling into Job Architect. We also can do more of a two-way API to feed information back into Rippling too.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, if you guys have any more questions about Job Architect, just put them in the chat or the Q&A. We could actually transition over to Q&A now. Thanks, Taylor.
Of course, of course. Let me go ahead, start sharing or we'll present again. Oh, my apologies for that. There we go. Go through this again. Awesome. Then I'll turn things back over to you, Kenny, for some Q&A.
Sounds good. Okay, it looks like. Okay, another question. By the way, everyone, if you are a SHRM or HRCI or World at Work certification holder, you can use the codes on the screen to get credit for completing this webinar. And like I said, if you're interested in exploring how Salary.com can support your job description or job architecture strategies and endeavors, just use the QR codes on the screen or the links that I put in the chat. Okay, so questions. So one we got on the demo that you just did, Martin asks if you can compare whole job families to the market.
Yeah, definitely. We can pull reports in order to do that comparison. We also can pull multi-job of reports of your own position so you can compare, even make changes in bulk.
Okay, I'm looking for a question we got earlier from Melissa. So when it comes to levels, I guess defining job levels across the org and career paths, is that owned by learning and development or compensation?
Yeah, I actually saw that question too earlier. I don't necessarily think there's one clear answer from what I've seen. I think what is important for that is defining who is holding these responsibilities because it really depends on the organization in terms of size, in terms of team, employees that you're working with, um, who is going to own these tasks. I've seen in organizations both own them, or I should say, some teams or some companies have comp own them, some have talent. But what I would recommend is having there be a clear definition of who is going to hold them.
William asks if you could talk more about how Job Architect links to compensation data insights, because I saw it was scraping job postings, but what other data does it utilize? I'm thinking of markets where pay transparency requirements currently do not exist.
Yeah, great question. So for a Job Architect Max product, there are a lot of content features available. So you can leverage online job postings as a key part of that. We have the AI job description tool. You could leverage third-party survey job descriptions too. So if you work with a Mercer survey, Towers Watson, you can leverage some of that information. We also have our own proprietary compoundless market data job descriptions, some skill information. You can leverage all that information as you were to write out the job descriptions. And the cool part about our products is that they're all integrated with one another too. So as you write out job descriptions, as you approve of them, all of that information, all the job description content is going to get pushed into our market pricing products. So then that really can help with the recommendation, with the pricing process. A more accurate and more robust job description leads to a better recommendation.
Here's a good question from Gretchen. Is there a Job Architect product that is not Max? If so, what are the differences?
Yeah, great question. So We are leaning towards this new product of Max, which really encompasses AI, real-time market insights infused throughout the job architect tool. Yes, there definitely is a job architect product without Max, which you can leverage if you don't want to necessarily use AI or real-time market insights. That definitely is available within the platform.
Yeah, the benefit of Max is like being able to see where your competitors and the market is going in real time. And then, of course, that AI piece that Taylor talked about today. Um, Jesse asks, does the system have the ability to look at the company, I assume the user's company job leveling structure, as opposed to Salary.com's leveling?
Yes, definitely. You'd also be able to pull in content from your own job description, so including your own leveling when creating a new job description.
How does job architecture handle jobs that have multiple functions?
That is another great question. So we'd be able to pull in those multiple functions into the job description. There's a lot of configurability around the tool in terms of setting up field headers, different data types. So we'd be able to pull in both job functions and align it to the position.
Another question from Donna, does salary data for an organization update automatically? And if so, how often?
Yeah, great question. So our comp analyst market data is updated on a monthly basis. So not sure if you all are familiar with our comp analyst market data, but it is our aggregate research tool. We go out each year, purchase around 400 employer reported salary surveys and aggregate that detail. Because we're constantly adding new surveys, they have rolling effective dates. We remove outdated surveys. That is what allows us to update the salary data on the monthly basis. And it is something that can be updated automatically in the tool for you, and your services team can handle all of that.
Martin asks, is there a minimum number of companies reporting that are included in the market insights in order to show data?
We adhere by all Safe Harbor World of Work guidelines in order to publish results. So we're very transparent in the number of organizations and incumbents within our market data.
Okay, Maddie asks, or she says, our managers just rewrite the job posting every time someone new is hired. How do we get them on the same page?
Yeah, great question. So we have a lot of collaboration tools available in the Job Architect Max product. It isn't just a job creation system, it's really management. And the key part of management is the collaboration process with your managers. So you have the ability to send them job descriptions to be able to review, make comments, edits, and then they can pass it along back to your team to do further review, add in additional comments, and this can all be managed within the platform, but you don't have to give them access to the tool as well. You can set up workflows with non-users, so just set up, enter in an email address, they'd be sent the job description to go make their changes, reviews, comments, and then again sent back to your, let's say, HR team to approve of the role.
Is there a minimum number of jobs needed in order to use Job Architect?
No minimum number of jobs. There's also no limits on the number of jobs you can add in the tool too. And you also have as many users as you may need.
This is a good question. Do managers or non-users have access to the AI tools in Job Architect if they're not set up in JA Max?
Another great question. You actually can determine the content non-users and managers see, so you can limit their access if you'd like.
Crystal asks, how do you make the case to leadership that something like this is worth the investment?
Yeah, another great question. So it really comes down to one, time saved by team members not having to manually do all this content. And then it keeps it in one secure environment where you can manage this year to year. So you're not completely starting from new in terms of projects. So as team members may leave, again, they're not, again, unsure of what the process looks like. They can lean on the system to manage all of that information.
Okay, looks like we have one more question about AI. So we've been using general AI tools like ChatGPT to write job descriptions. Is it necessary to switch to something purpose-built for comp or HR?
So I typically recommend with general tools. It can be helpful for some things, but that's more manual tasks like doing email work, Excel work, PowerPoints. Often in the comp and HR space, it's important to use a purpose-built tool because a lot of these decisions are around pay. Even creating job descriptions ultimately determines pay. So if I was told my job description, my pay was determined due to a chat GPT or a copilot, I would lose trust with my organization. I'd have a lot of concerned questions around that. With purpose-built tools like our Comp Analyst AI suite, it is pulling from our domain. It is pulling from our library of resources. So you can have a lot of confidence in the data when you are communicating job descriptions or salary increases, salary changes with your team.
Okay, this one's a long one, but the gist is that they have over 1,000 employees and their job descriptions are, in her words, a mess, just in terms of formatting and what is and isn't included. So can Job Architect automatically clean that up for us?
Definitely. We have tools. We actually are releasing the second version of Job Architect Max, and we'll be releasing some tools around reviewing, cleaning up, consolidating job descriptions. So that is something we're hoping, or a place we're hoping to take the platform.
We're creating a job architecture from the ground up. We're currently updating job descriptions and have used AI tools. Maybe I missed this, but is there an agent that can help design pay grades and bands by uploading our jobs?
Awesome. You definitely didn't miss this because we have this there we have a lot of products here at Salary.com. What I covered mostly today is our Job Architect Max product, which is more job description management. What you're talking about would be more of our enterprise, our compensation management tool, where we do have agents tooled around creating pay ranges, salary structures from scratch. So definitely recommend still reaching out. We can get you in touch with the right parties to do a demonstration of the enterprise platform so you can walk through some of the salary structure tools.
Okay. Can the tool also make recommendations on when job titles or functions in our current structure are too granular or too general?
So right now, this isn't something within the job architect tool, but is we're constantly looking at feedback of what the
Hmm.
Max product can do. So this is a great point of feedback and something where, again, as I'm kind of mentioning, we're releasing enhancements of the solution. And a key part of it is going to be the reviewing of your job descriptions, and also comparing them to what your peers are doing, to what other postings are doing. So this question here of recommending when job titles are too granular or too general is something we're hoping to take the platform to. So it's definitely something I'll talk to our product team around.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for the engagement and the chat and the questions. It's awesome. And it's good to hear feedback on Max. But that's all we have time for today. So a big thank you to Taylor, for your time and everyone for being here and for all of your time. We look forward to having you in future webinars. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks, Taylor.
Thank you, everyone.
Talk soon.